Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 20. Athopaspashya salilam tandate tatsamahitah ajanan api samharam pranakrachra upasthite.
Hare Krishna. Text 20, translation. Since his life was in danger, he touched water intensity and concentrated upon the chanting of the hymns for throwing nuclear weapons, although he did not know how to withdraw such weapons.
Tata pradashkritam teja prachandam sarvato disham pranapadam abhiprakshya vishnum jishnuruvachaha.
Text 21, translation. Thereupon, a glaring light spread in all directions. It was so fierce that Arjun thought his own life in danger, and so he began to address Lord Shri Krishna.
Arjuna vacha Krishna Krishna Mahabaho Bhaktanam Abhaya Ankara Tvam Eko Dayamananam Aparvargosi Samshrutaha.
Arjun said, "O my Lord Shri Krishna, you are the Almighty Personality of Godhead. There is no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material miseries can find the path of liberation in you only.
Tvam adya purushaha shaksad Ishvara prakrite paraha Mayam yudasya chichaktya kevalya sthiti atmani.
You are the original personality of Godhead who expands himself all over the creations and is transcendental to material energy. You have cast away the effects of material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. You are always situated in eternal bliss and transcendental knowledge.
Sa eva jiva lokasya maya mohita chetasaha vidhatte svana viryena shreyo dharmadi lakshanam.
And yet, though you are beyond the purview of the material energy, you execute the four principles of liberation characterized by religion and so on for the ultimate good of the conditioned souls.
Tathayam chavataraste bhuvo bharajihe saya swanam chananya bhavanam anudyanaya chakshakrat.
Thus, you descend as an incarnation to remove the burden of the world and to benefit your friends, especially those who are your exclusive devotees and are wrapped in mediation upon you.
Kim idam svetkuto veti deva deva na vetmi aham sarvato mukham ayati teja paramadarunam.
O Lord of Lords, how is it that this dangerous effulgence is spreading all around? Where does it come from? I do not understand it.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Vetitam Drona Putrasya Brahmamastram Pradarsitam Nevasu Veda Samharam Pranabhatta Upasthita.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Know from me that this is the act of the son of Drona. He has thrown the hymns of nuclear energy, Brahmastra, and he does not know how to retract the glare. He has helplessly done this, being afraid of imminent death."
Nahai Asyanyat यतामं कञ्चित् अस्त्रं प्रत्यावाकर्षानं जहायस्त्रतेज उन्नतम् अस्त्रघ्नोहायस्त्रतेजसः.
O Arjun, O Arjun, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon.
सत उवाच श्रुत्वा भगवता प्रोक्तं फल्गुणापरवीरः स्पृष्ट्वपस्तं परिक्रम्य ब्रह्मस्त्रं सत्तते.
Sri Sutta Goswami said, hearing this from the personality of Godhead, Arjun touched water for purification, and after circumambulating Lord Shri Krishna, he cast his Brahmastra weapon to counteract the other one.
संहत्यान्योऽयम् उभयो तेजसि सारसंवृते अप्रत्यरोदसीखं च प्रवृत्ते रक्कवहीनवत्. Hare Krishna.
When the rays of the two Brahmastras combined, a great circle of fire, like the disk of the sun, covered all outer space and the whole firmament of planets.
I think it's only till text 30. Oh, sorry, 38. Text 31. Drishvastratejiस्तुतयस्त्रीलोकान् प्रतहान् महत् ध्यायमान प्रजा सर्वः संवृत्तकम् अमं सता.
All the population of the three worlds was scorched by the combined heat of the weapons. Everyone was reminded of the samrasataka fire which takes place at the time of annihilation.
प्रजोप्रद्रवम् अलक्ष्य लोकव्यतिकरं च तं मातं च वासुदेवस्य संजहारर्जुनोद्वयम्.
Thus, seeing the disturbance of the general populace and the imminent destruction of the planets, Arjuna at once retracted both Brahmastra weapons as Lord Shri Krishna desired.
तथा असत्यतरसा दारुणं गौतमी सुतं पपन्दमानसतं रक्षः पासुं रासन्य यथा.
Arjuna, his eyes blazing in anger, like two red balls of copper, dexterously arrested the son of Gautami and bound him with ropes like an animal.
शिबिराय निःसन्तं राजवपात्वरिपुं बलात् प्रहार्जुनं प्रकुपितो भगवान् अम्बुजक्सनः.
After binding Aswatthama, Arjuna wanted to take him to the military camp. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, looking on with his lotus eyes, spoke to angry Arjuna.
Mainam partahasi tratum brahmabandhum imam jahi yosav anakasha suktan avadini sibalakan.
Lord Shri Krishna said, O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of Brahman Bandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep.
Matam pramatam anmatam suktam balam sriyam jadam prapanam viratam pitam naripum hanti dharmavid.
A person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who is careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot. Nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul.
Swapranam ya parapraneha prapushnati agrana khalaha tatvatastasya Tasya hai shreyo yaddo satyati atapuman.
A cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others, others' lives, deserves to be killed for his own well-being. Otherwise, he will go down by his own actions.
Pratishritam cha bhavata panchalyashvanvato mama aharishya sirastasya yaste manani putraha.
Furthermore, I have personally heard you promise Draupadi that you would bring forth the head of the killer of her sons.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry for any mistakes made.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Harsha Mataji, Deepak Prabhu. That was really nice. Yeah, thank you. So, of course, we are continuing with chapter 7. And today we will be looking at, so we'll just do the and then we can start. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, Hare Krishna. So thank you for coming to another session of chat. Thank you for the organizers for giving me another chance to give a class here. So I'll just share my presentation and we can get started. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we'll go through the Sanskrit verse first. Nahyasyanyata kinchid astram pratyavakashanam Jayastra teja unnadham astragyohyastra tejasa. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So translation is, O Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon. And have a short purport this time. So would anyone like to volunteer to read this purport, please?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Sorry.
I don't know who was first.
Okay.
Any, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
For the atomic bombs, there is no counter weapon to neutralize the effect, but by a subtle science, the action of a Brahmastra can be counteracted. And those who were expert in the military science in those days could counteract the Brahmastra. The son of Dronacharya did not know the art of counteracting the weapon, and therefore Arjuna was asked to counteract it by the power of his own weapon. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for reading, Mataji. So, okay, so we can see here, if we just first go back to this, Krishna is saying to Arjuna that he is expert in military science, which means he is qualified to actually counteract Ashwatthama's Brahmastra with his own Brahmastra. And then Srila Prabhupada is explaining or contrasting this to the atomic bombs that we have these days, the nuclear weapons and things like that, where we don't have any counter weapons to neutralize them. But this is talking about a different kind of military science, which was existing in the world at that knowledge of how can we counteract each particular weapon. And then it's saying here that the son of Dronacharya did not know this art, so therefore implying that he's not expert in the military science. It says that Arjuna knows this knowledge, so therefore he is expert, but then that implies that Ashwatthama wasn't an expert in the military science, even though he was the son of Dronacharya, who knew all of these things, but he himself, he didn't know this. So anyway, so Krishna is basically ordering him that now, please release your own Brahmastra, and in that way you can counteract Ashwatthama's. So yes, there's quite a small purport. So I've got some points from the lecture. Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture on text 28 and 29 in Vrindavan, 26. So, okay, so Prabhupada says that, so counteraction, this is military science. Samved, Yajurved, Atharva Ved, and military science also, one of the part of the Vedas, Dhanurved. It is called Dhanurveda, how to utilize Dhanuhu. Dhanuhu means bow and arrows. Similarly, Ayurveda. Ayurveda means medical science, how to protect the Ayu, because the body is perishable. So Prabhupada is saying this military science is also included as the Vedas. It's one of the, you could say, the supplementary Vedas, which are also there in addition to the main four Vedas that we know about. They have these supplementary Vedas, and here it just gives, Srila Prabhupada just gives two examples, Dhanurveda, which is what we're looking at today, and also Ayurveda. So Prabhupada is saying that this Dhanurveda comes from the word Dhanu, which actually refers to bow and arrows, because they're firing these different kind of arrows or different kind of weapons, and for each one there's a specific way to counteract that particular weapon. So this is the science that they knew back in these days, or the Kshatriyas knew this. So then, so we see basically, we understand the Vedas. Veda means knowledge. So all the knowledge is there. And even this military science is there included. So then Prabhupada goes on to say that, so in the Vedic knowledge, everything is there to guide the human society. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam idam. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1-3. Nigama means Veda, and that is kalpataru. Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam idam. It is compared with a tree. What kind of tree? Desire tree. Nigama kalpataro. Kalpataru. The kalpataru can be found in the spiritual world, not in this material world. So again, Prabhupada is making this point that all of the knowledge that we need to have a proper human society is there. It's already given to us in the Vedas, and therefore it's being compared to a desire tree, the kalpataru or the kalpavriksha, which I'm sure we've all heard of. How all the trees in the spiritual world, all the trees in Goloka Vrindavan are desire trees. They're not ordinary trees. So similarly, the Vedic knowledge is being compared to that, where, like the desire tree, you can get whatever you want. So similarly, in the Vedas, you can get whatever knowledge that you desire. We'll go into that more soon as well. So just to quote that verse, or at least the translation of the verse that Prabhupada mentioned. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 3. It says that, O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So this is the point. So Prabhupada was mentioning this one particular line, Nigama kalpataro galitam phalamidam, which means that refers to the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. So here, again, the Vedas are being compared to a desire tree, where you can get everything you want, but the mature fruit of that desire tree, the most ripened fruit, or in other words, the best of those Vedic literatures, the real essence is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And because it came from the mouth, from the lips of a pure devotee, then it was even more relishable. So that's the verse I was referring to. Then he goes on to say in the lecture, Kalpataru means whatever you want, you can get from that tree, because everything is spiritual. Just like you are a spiritual being, I am also a spiritual being. If I say, bring me a glass of water, you'll bring. Give me some fruit, you'll give me. Bring this, you'll bring. Because you are spirit soul, you can supply me whatever I want. This is the spiritual idea. Not that I wanted a glass of water, you can supply me a glass of water only. No. If I want other things, you can supply me also. This is an example, crude example. So Prabhupada here is making the point that, just like we are not material, ultimately, material has no life, no consciousness. We are spiritual. We are spirit souls. The spirit soul is what gives the life and consciousness to the body. So being spiritual entities, living conscious entities, we can do multiple things. We can change according to the situation, the circumstance. It's not that we're just a machine and you can only ask for one thing and the machine only supplies one thing and that's it. No, we have consciousness, we have free will, we can give according to the situation. So similarly, the Vedas are compared to that. So again, whatever you want, you can get. It's not that you can only get one type of knowledge and that's all. So as Prabhupada says, this is a crude example, just a very simple example for us to understand this point better. And then he says, Veda means knowledge. So from the Vedas, you can have all different types of knowledge. namely material knowledge and spiritual knowledge, both perfectly. Sorry. Because we have now forgotten our spiritual energy, we do not cultivate spiritual energy, therefore the Veda is there. So, here's Prabhupada's clarifying that we can get both material and knowledge, both material and spiritual knowledge perfectly. We can get all of this from the Vedas. And he's making a point that this is important for us because we need that spiritual knowledge because we've forgotten it at the moment. We've forgotten, it says we've forgotten our spiritual energy. So it means we have forgotten our spiritual identity as well. So the Vedas are there to remind us of this. So then Prabhupada goes on to say that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in simple Bengali language, it is said, Anadi Bahir Mukha Jiva, Krishna Buli Gela, Ataeva Krishna Veda Purana Karila. This is from Madhya Lila, chapter 20, text 117. So because these rascals, Anadi Bahir Mukha, do not know, then there's in the lecture, there's a bird chirping in the background. And then Prabhupada uses that as an example. He says that just like this bird chirping, well, he does not know what he is, where from he is coming, where to go, nothing. That is low-grade life. So we are now forgetful of our spiritual energy. And because we do not know spiritual energy, therefore we have no knowledge of God. This is our position, and it is coming since very, 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 very long time immemorial. Therefore the Vedas are there. So Prabhupada, again, making this point that we've forgotten, forgetful of spiritual energy, we do not know it, and therefore we don't have any knowledge about God, and also our own spiritual position, all these things. We have no knowledge because we've been in that position for so many lifetimes. So therefore Prabhupada is saying it's since very, 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 very long time. So again, this is why we need the Vedas. This is why all those scriptures are there to remind us of what we have forgotten. You know, just like Prabhupada said when he came to the West, and they said, "Why have you come here?" You know. And then he says, you know, when you came to India, you took everything, but you forgot one thing. You forgot the spiritual knowledge of India. That is the one thing that you didn't take. So I've come to give you that which you forgot. So similarly, this is what the Vedas are doing. This is what the scriptures are doing. So that's why Srila Prabhupada spent so much time translating those scriptures so that we can also in the West understand those scriptures and get that knowledge, understand our spiritual identity, the spiritual energy, all of these things. So, you know, it's a hugely important thing that Prabhupada has done for us, as we know. And just wanted to mention, you know, is about this bird chirping. It's very nice, actually. One thing I thought about is that whenever you hear a class in Vrindavan, you hear the birds of the Dham in the background as well. You hear the noises of Vrindavan Dham. Just a side point, but it's just really nice to hear, you know, the parrots and different birds of Vrindavan in the background. It helps you to bring you into that space of Vrindavan. So I don't know, just felt like mentioning that is something very special about hearing. Obviously, it's special to hear any classes from Prabhupada, but I just like to hear these classes in Vrindavan because you can hear these sounds of the Dham as well. So yeah, anyway, moving on. So Prabhupada says also, he says that formally in the military science, you have released one kind of arrow. If I'm expert, then I can release another arrow, which will counteract your arrow. Neva so Veda Samharam. This is from yesterday's verse. Prabhupada is quoting text 27. that this is called samharam. Samharam. So this is Prabhupada says in the word-for-word translation for the previous verse, says that it means retraction. So this is the way of, as we said, releasing another weapon which can retract the first weapon. So this is you could say the Sanskrit name for it is samharam. So yeah, so Ashwatthama released that Brahmastra. Now Krishna advised Arjuna that you release this Samharashtra. So this is Prabhupada again is giving a Sanskrit term for this. We got the original Brahmastra, and then the weapon that is released to retract the first weapon is called a Samharashtra. So that was nice to hear, because I never heard that word before until this class. But then Prabhupada says that different astras are released. Different astra means weapon. So different weapons are released by different expert military men. So that science is not yet discovered. And then he says by mantra. So these weapons are released through mantra. And then he goes on to say, so I'm just going to look at it briefly because I don't want to go into tomorrow's class. Whoever is giving the class, they'll be looking at text 29. So this is going on to text 29, but just mention this one paragraph that Prabhupada is saying this is called subtle science, not gross. They have discovered this atomic weapon. They require so many chemicals. But when you come to the higher stage, subtle, then mantra and water will do. Nothing more. No more chemicals. Simply mantra and water. That is yet you have to learn. But these things are there in the Vedas. So, yeah, so as I said, I don't want to go into detail, but we'll hear tomorrow in the class that in order to release these kind of subtle weapons, you touch some water and then recite certain mantras, and in that way, without Prabhupada saying here, without the use of any kind of chemicals or anything like that, you can release those weapons. And all of this knowledge is there in the Vedas. So, we understand that back in the old days, Brahmanas reciting mantras and all these kind of processes where you have to use mantras, you have to recite the mantra perfectly and you have to follow the process perfectly, otherwise it doesn't work properly. So I'm assuming, that would be the case with this kind of thing as well. I'm sure if you don't recite the mantra properly, then the weapon that you are trying to release wouldn't work properly. So you have to know the mantra, how to recite the mantra. But still, in one sense, it sounds, simpler than the kind of weapons that we have these days. So this is, the subtle science, and Prabhupada talks about this as well, like Shabda Vedi, like just by sound. Some of these weapons, they work just by sound. You release them and they hear, whatever the target is, makes a sound, and then it goes straight to that sound. So it navigates via sound. So there's so many things like that which work through sound. And, ultimately, we can see how everything has come together in the universe through sound as well. You can read about this, in the sections of the Srimad Bhagavatam which talk about creation. Ultimately, it all starts from sound. Creation starts on through the subtle elements, through subtle mediums, and then Bhagavatam explains, then grosser and grosser elements come into the equation, and then through this process, gradually the material world comes into existence. But then taking it to a spiritual point of view. So obviously, we're talking. Is subtle, but it's still material. These weapons, they're on the subtle platform, but they're still material weapons. And through material sound, but then obviously our focus as devotees is spiritual sound vibrations, and again mantra, but which mantra? Not these kind of mantras from Dhanurveda, from military science, but the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the transcendental sound vibrations from the spiritual world. Just like we were, if we go back, we were talking initially about desire trees, kalpavrikshas from the spiritual world, from Goloka Vrindavan. So similarly, as we know, that the Hare Krishna mantra has also, come down to us from Goloka Vrindavan. As all the acharyas explain, and as Narottam Das Thakur explains in his bhajans, Golokera Prema Dana Harinama Sankirtan. So this Harinam Sankirtan, this chanting of the holy name of the Lord, has also come down to us from Goloka Vrindavan, from the spiritual world. It is not a material vibration, and also it's coming from the spiritual world, so it's eternal. This, it's not that it's just it's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just made it up when he came and then it just started from there. No, the Hare Krishna mantra has always been around. It's always been there. It's eternal, because it's from the spiritual world. And similarly, this Vedic knowledge, which it says here, is from the spiritual world. So ultimately, the Vedas are not like any material knowledge or any material books or like that, where they just last for a short time. They were written at a certain time, and they will be in this world for a certain time, and then they'll be forgotten. But no, Vedic knowledge is actually eternal knowledge. So therefore, it doesn't come under any particular material designations, like this is just for Indians, this is just for Hindus, this is for Americans, English, whatever it might be. It doesn't come under any of those material designations. It is for everyone. Prabhupada also says in this lecture, I haven't got it here, but he says that these Vedas and Puranas, Veda Purana, he says, it's not just for India, he says it's for the whole universe. But at the same time, those who are born in India, in that part of the world, they're fortunate because that Vedic knowledge is still there, or it's at the moment it's coming from there. But ultimately, yeah, this knowledge is for everyone, and it's eternal. So it applies to all times, places, and circumstances. So it's always eternally relevant. So it's not that only in the Vedic times that knowledge was relevant, but it's no longer relevant for so-called modern society. No, just like Bhagavad Gita, it's eternally relevant. Even in today's day and age, we can get so much from Bhagavad Gita and the other scriptures. So yeah, it's eternal. It's all from the spiritual world. And yeah, so as I said, there wasn't much of a purport, and so I tried to cover the points that I could from Prabhupada's lecture, but yeah, I know we might finish a bit early, but yeah, so just to go back to one of the points I mentioned earlier, though, that you're mentioning how this Vedic knowledge is eternal, and we mentioned, in some of the paragraphs where it says that all knowledge can be found within the Vedas. So whatever we would like to know, it's there. So that means obviously there's a huge amount of knowledge there. And we were talking earlier about how we've forgotten our spiritual identity, we've forgotten spiritual knowledge, so therefore the Vedas are there. But because everything else is there in the Vedas, it would be, especially nowadays, we wouldn't be able to find, we wouldn't be able to go through the Vedas, all of we don't even have time, we don't even have a long enough lifetime even to go through all the Vedas. So it wouldn't really work in Kali Yuga, even though that the spiritual knowledge is there. But then we hear Prabhupada talks about many times, the vast majority of the Vedas is not that spiritual knowledge, it's material. Some of it may be more elevated material processes than others, but still it's all material. It's mostly, the majority is related to the 4 aims of materialistic way of life, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, all these things. But it's still material. But we want, so that means we want to find that spiritual knowledge within that, find the essence. We don't have time or the facility to go through all of it. So therefore, Prabhupada didn't give us everything and said, okay, this is everything, now you go for it. No, he translated just what we need, just the essence that we need to make spiritual progress and ultimately go back to Godhead. He understood that the people I'm coming to the West to preach to give this knowledge to, they're not going to be able to understand the language, let alone understand the topics mentioned in the Vedas so yeah, therefore he just translated what we needed. So we got Bhagavad Gita, we've got Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then we've got the practical guidance of how to be a devotee, how a devotee should act, given in Nectar Instruction, Nectar Devotion, and so many other smaller books Prabhupada has given us. Prabhupada has given us the pastimes and the philosophical understanding of the pastimes together in Krishna book. So many things, but still he's just given us what we need. And sorry. Again, if we go back to Bhagavatam verse that Prabhupada mentioned, we talked about the desire tree of the Vedic literatures and how Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit, or is the essence of that. So again, this is what Shukadeva Goswami gave, and then in turn Prabhupada, gave it to us. So he's given the essence, he's given us the fruit, which specifically, as we know, Srimad Bhagavatam specifically focuses on bhakti yoga, devotional service, which is the simplest and quickest way to make spiritual progress, because as we know, those who have done studied these kind of things, maybe in Bhakti Shastri, we have the yoga ladder and we have different stages on the spiritual path. But if we go straight to Bhakti Yoga as given to us by Srila Prabhupada, then we skip so many stages on that yoga ladder. So in that way, it's quicker and simpler. But also, ultimately, the other paths don't end up in the same destination. They go some of the way there, but only bhakti, the path of devotional service, takes us all the way back to Godhead, all the way back to the spiritual world, to Goloka Vrindavan, or wherever our constitutional place is. Obviously, we know we can't go there without bhakti, without devotional service. So that's why Srila Prabhupada has always focused on that. And even in his Bhaktivedanta purports, in his purports to Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam already focuses on bhakti throughout, but even in his purports to Bhagavad Gita, even if the verse is not directly referring to Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti, he will still make sure to remind us what the aim of this is, that we're reading this verse and it's telling us a certain instruction, but ultimately, what is it all leading to? It's all leading to us trying to develop bhakti, to develop devotion, and ultimately love of God. So he makes sure that we never lose sight of the goal of the Bhagavad Gita, or of that particular literature that he's commenting on. Because as we know, Krishna, as he explains himself in Bhagavad Gita, is the source of the Vedas, he's the compiler of the Vedas, he's the goal of the Vedas, everything. And Prabhupada says many times that if we do not understand, after all our study of the literatures, if we don't come to the point of knowing Krishna, understanding Krishna, ultimately loving Krishna, then it was all a waste of time, because we missed on the whole point of it. The whole point of all these Vedic literatures is not to read and obtain theoretical knowledge just for the sake of it, just so that we can quote it in classes, or just say that, oh, I know all of this, or I know all the verses of Bhagavad Gita, or these kind of things. So obviously that's good, but we need to understand what's the point of knowing all those things. What's the essence? What's the goal? What is the prayojana, the goal? Pure devotional service. And ultimately, that's why we chant. We're talking about spiritual sound vibrations. We all know, but it's always good to hear that what is the meaning of chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. We're asking, my dear Lord Sri Krishna, my dear energy of the Lord Srimati Radharani, please engage me in your devotional service. I have been engaged for so long, in so many lifetimes, in the service of my senses, of my mind, chasing after sense gratification. But now I've had enough of that. I want to put that behind me, and now I would like to serve you. I'd like to give my heart to your service. So yeah, please engage me in your devotional service. So very nice. As I said, we've all heard this before, but it's very nice to remind us of that, especially during this month of Kartik, when we're trying to make an extra effort to connect with Krishna in that way, and pray, beg for him to engage us in his devotional service. And just on that point, as I said, we'll finish early because I don't have any more slides. But I just to end with one verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. I've actually got it here on my wall, so I'll just read. I just stuck it up on my wall actually. Very nice verse. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 33. And so it says that one is immediately freed from the clutches of Maya if he seriously and sincerely says, my dear Lord Krishna, although I've forgotten you for so many long years in the material world, today I'm surrendering unto you. I am your sincere and serious servant. Please engage me in your service. It's a very beautiful verse from the CC, and yeah, just to reinforce that point about the meaning of Hare Krishna, why we're chanting to be engaged in devotional service. So yeah, so we'll stop there. Does anyone have any questions or corrections or comments or reflections they would like to add? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Nikhil Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you very much for your class. I have a little question. It could be funny. And I want to ask, you know, this Brahmastra which was thrown.
Yeah.
Is it a kind of, can that be touched, or is it just in the air? Is it like you say that is water and the mantra? Can that be touched, or it just been to the vibration it is thrown to destroy?
I see. Yeah, that's a good question actually. It doesn't say exactly. I don't know if other devotees know, but it would imply that they're not physically holding it, but you know they're chanting the mantra and touching the water, that purified water, and then you know if they do all of that properly, then that weapon will appear and it will go to the target. Because we know that when Ashwatthama used this, when he used the Brahmastra against Parikshit Maharaj, who was still in the womb of his mother, he released it, but it was only meant to go to him. You know, the weapon goes directly to him. It finds wherever that person is, wherever the target is, and it goes straight to him. So it worked like that. But yeah, I don't think they physically hold it like a normal, you know, like a normal arrow, and then.
Okay.
But I don't know if does anyone know more about that? Okay, all right.
Thank you. I also want to know, like, you know, he was a son of a Brahman, in a Brahmana. In a Vedic time, it was the Brahmana now, and Vedic time is a lot different. There much more. Everything was, whatever they were doing, practicing was much more potent than in Kali Yuga. So, I mean, he was a son of a Brahmana. So, how come he did not know? I mean, it's just a silly question.
No, it's not. It's not a silly question. Thank you, Mataji. So, yeah, that's a good point. Because I also mentioned the point that, you know, Dronacharya, he was expert in this military science. Yes, so why is it that his son didn't even know how to retract that? So again, I'll open it up to anyone else if they know more. But at least from my side, what I know is that, or what I've heard, is that even Dronacharya wasn't, you could say, acting as a proper Brahmana. He wasn't following his proper dharma, like really. You know, I've heard this from, you know, devotees, that he shouldn't have even been involved in the actual fighting. You know, that's not his job.
He's a Brahmana.
Yeah, he's not a Kshatriya, so he wasn't meant to be actually fighting. But he's teaching this, that's fine. That's one thing. But to actually fight himself, so devotees explaining that way, so that he wasn't really, he's not following his dharma properly. So therefore, you know, what can you expect from the son? If the father is doing this, then the son, again, he's not going to follow the Brahmana dharma properly. You know, they're just meant to be teaching the knowledge, and what for the benefit of all society, for the benefit of human society. But we can see here, Dronacharya wasn't following that properly, and you know, therefore his son wasn't either. But again, I don't know if other devotees have more information on that.
Also, I just thought that, you know, in that age, you know, when Krishna was there, he was there. So in that age, if that kind of a you know, action was performed, so what to speak about this Kali Yuga? You know, that's how we're so far away from that. So
yeah,
obviously now what's happening and what will happen, it's going to be very, very difficult to practice proper dharma, you know. because our whole atmosphere is changed, and it is very difficult. I mean, I know Srila Prabhupada is, he has given us everything to have the knowledge, but even if we want to, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, as I said, at least Prabhupada has made it as easy as he can do for us, that we don't have to worry so much about all of those things. Because if we're performing devotional service, then like often Prabhupada says that Vaishnava is even higher than a Brahmana.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like a shortcut way to make progress, that if we just follow this process basically that Srila Prabhupada has given us, we can elevate ourselves with Krishna's mercy, even and mercy of spiritual master, of course. We can elevate ourselves even beyond a Brahmana. I don't know if that answers the question though. Does anyone else have anything?
Thank
Can
you.
I ask a question, Prabhuji?
No, Prabhu.
I think Harsha Mataji was first.
Thank you. I just feel inspired to ask a question today. I'm just a little bit confused. Like, there's the 4 ashramas, the Brahmanas, Sannyasis, Vanaprastha, and Grihastha. So is it that if, like, say, if you're a Grihastha, like I am, so we've got family and family duties, and all that lasts a very long time in your life, to fulfill your duties as well as do devotional service. But is the goal to move up from a Grihastha to a Vanaprastha, or is it okay to always be a Grihastha? I'm a bit, are we supposed to be moving up that ladder, or?
It's a good question. Thank you, Mataji. So, as you mentioned, we generally, according to our ashram system, we start with brahmachari. So at the first kind of stage of life where you practice celibacy and just focus on spiritual life. And then after that, the vast majority of people, only a few kind of remain lifelong brahmacharis, but generally the vast majority of people, they then go on to the grihastha ashram, to family life. But then vanaprastha doesn't mean giving up family life. It just means that you've got to an age where you've kind of sorted out most of your material duties, and now you can kind of reduce that and focus more on spiritual life, increase your focus on spiritual life. But it's not that you have to give up anything, really. Generally for most people, you'll still stay with your partner, and there's so many examples you see in our movement, that devotees after a certain age, they've raised their children, and they're the children are self-sufficient, and then they spend more time focusing on spiritual life. They may take more service on. They may spend time during the year going to the holy places. So just whatever way they can, just trying to bring more and more focus on spiritual life. But in one sense, they're still living as a family. There's nothing changed in that sense. And then again, in this day and age, it's not that everyone is going to then become a sannyasi, because the aim is not ultimately. These are still material things. They're not spiritual things. They're kind of helping us to gradually detach from material life, but they're not the goal. Our goal is not to. My aim one day I'm going to become a sannyasi. I'm going to become this, become that. That's not our goal. That's just to help us. But ultimately, we are, we are aiming to get pure devotional service to Krishna. That's our aim. So whatever helps us the most to do that, then that's best. So there's some senior devotee couples who you see that together they make such an amazing team, and they preach so amazingly that they would do less for Krishna if they then separated. So it's they're doing what's best according to their nature.
Yeah.
Just like you know, you have Krishna Dharma Prabhu and his wife, you have Vaishashika Prabhu and his wife, you have all these devotees, Kripamoya Prabhu and his wife. Just a few examples, but these devotees who, you know, together they're doing such wonderful service for Krishna. So yeah, I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, but thank you very much. More clear.
Okay. Who else? I think a couple of others were going to say something.
Krishna Prabhuji,
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Just a little bit of elaboration on what I've heard with respect to the Astra art. So yeah. Basically the mantra invokes the weapon. It's not that the mantra is the weapon, the mantra invokes the weapon, is the way I've heard it from a couple of swamis, that it invokes the weapon and then weapon is released either through sort of an arrow or whatever. So the mantra actually evokes the weapon. And the way I've heard that Aswastama was not qualified effectively to learn the art. And so you only learned half the art. But on the other flip side, you also see Abhimanyu learned the art of entering into a Chakravyu whilst he was in the womb of Subhadra. But he hadn't heard the art of how to come out. That's why he was entrapped in the Chakravyu. So these, you know, there's a qualification issue, but also in terms of timeliness, in terms of when it was taught and how it was taught. But from what I heard from one of the lectures is that Aswastama was not qualified for this art actually, because he wasn't even a proper Brahmin actually. So he's a Brahma Bandhu. So that's just a little bit of what I've learned in some of the lectures on this particular subject. I'll give you that. This the other Mataji's question on Anaprashta. So Prabhupada says that in Krishna consciousness, even a Grahastha can effectively be in sannyas while still being Grahastha. If one is fully Krishna conscious in the house and all the children and everything in the house and activities are Krishna conscious, then it is as good as being a sannyas in sannyas. Or if, in fact, he says it's higher than even being in the sannyas. If you Grahastha, living a life of Krishna consciousness can sometimes be harder than taking sannyas, and therefore he has achieved perfection. But in the material world that we're living in, it's seldom that we can actually achieve that level of consciousness. So therefore, at the age of 50, our sastras advise us that we should be ready to start relinquishing, once the children are settled, to relinquish material responsibilities and attachments in order to focus on spiritual life and fully dedicate our sort of focus on spiritual life, which is why we can't, in this day and age, actually move out to the forest. We're still, in essence, living within the world and within the family, but the essence is to really, so reduce our material attachments to family and wealth and everything else, and focus exclusively on developing our Krishna consciousness. We should be doing that throughout our life, but of course, at that point in time, we should be in a physical and financial position to be able to start relinquishing material attachments to family, friends, wealth, etc. So that's how much I've kind of picked up from Prabhupada's lectures on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shailesh Prabhu, for your wonderful contributions as always. Any last things before we finish from anyone?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a little comment.
Yeah.
As Palika Mataji was asking that why Aswatthama was, why he was acting in such a way. That, you know, like, because actually this is all, they are all, you know, like what you call, they are actors in the play of Krishna.
Yeah.
So actually this is all set for us to learn from it, but we should not imitate them. And also, you know, like, because Aswathama, out of anger, he acted like that, because his father was killed unlawfully. But he forgot that, you know, this Kaurava, they also, first of all, they broke the war rules. And that's why everything was, you know, like, then there was no rules were, you know, followed in the war. But due to the anger, he just wanted to react. So, you know, that's why it says, you know, anger is very good in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains that once we're angry, it's very difficult to control our senses. So, Hare Krishna. Just
Hare Krishna. Thank you. That was a very nice point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are all these pastimes, these devotees within these pastimes, they are teaching us so many different lessons. And this is the, like Mataji said, this is like a play arranged by Krishna. So ultimately, yeah, it's Krishna's arrangement behind all of it. Yeah, okay, I think we should stop here. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And obviously, we'll continue with this chapter tomorrow. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for your lovely, wonderful class. Hare Krishna.